You talked about in one of your latest late kicks the schedule, how it looks daunting, but if you look at the games in their totality, you just have to look game by each game. What do you think the ceiling is with this Arkansas football team?
From a pure record standpoint, it's hard to put them in that 8 or 9 win range. I say hard. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's just, there is some difficulty here. But the problem I always have with the way people interpret a preseason schedule is, of course, we have expectation for every team, but then there's the assumption that every team is going to meet their expectation. So just as much as we could have a team like Arkansas exceed someone's record expectation, well, that has to coincide by default with other teams not meeting their record expectation. So, in other words, we have never entered a season where you look at someone's schedule and then you get to the end of the year and you say every single team on that schedule is exactly what I thought they'd be. So right now we look at a trip to Georgia, October 2nd. That's not fun, followed by at Ole Miss the next week. You could look at a trip to Baton Rouge in mid-November. No, that doesn't look fun. You just don't know for sure what they're going to be by that point. And it stands to reason a couple of these hurdles right now that the college football public would kind of tell you are insurmountable are going to be in play. I mean, we see upsets every year in general, but it could be just that some of these games that look like there'll be 3 touchdown plus spreads, when you get to game day, you're looking at a 9 or a 10 or an 11, and all of a sudden that seems a lot more winnable. All of a sudden you got a lot more than just a puncher's chance. So if all of these folks were to play up to their potential, then yes, it's going to be hard for Arkansas to clear those hurdles, but we all know that's not happening. And we also know, or at least we think we know internally there, Sam Pittman's probably got a little bit better product than what the individual parts would lead you to believe the sum will be. And so I feel good. I feel good about him making a bowl game at the least.
You're keeping an eye on Malik Hornsby this fall. This is the guy that flew up y'all's recruiting rankings within the top 100 and a top 5 dual-threat quarterback. What do you think Coach Briles and Sam Pittman should do with Malik Hornsby this year?
I think they should leverage him in a way that gives them the best chance to win games, which is the most garden variety answer ever. That's what coaches always say. We're just going to play the guy who gives us the best chance to win games. Well, sometimes you got more than one of them. And I think they may have more than one of them right now. And if you just listen or if you talk to some folks close to Arkansas, you can always tell at the quarterback position, with young guys especially, you can tell if you have something special on your hands by whether people volunteer the name versus whether you have to ask them about the guy. And with Malik Hornsby, you don't even have to ask Arkansas about him. You don't have to ask people close to the program. They'll tell you before you even get your question out of the mouth. They'll tell you, oh, that guy's special. Oh, that guy can fly. He's got a different skill set. That's a different dynamic than anyone else we have on this team. So if you're telling me all that, and if that coaching staff believes it, which I think they do, then you've got to find ways to utilize the talent you have on your roster. Sometimes you got a bunch of it at wide receiver. Sometimes you got a bunch of it at running back. Well, it just so happens Arkansas may have a little bit of an excess of it at quarterback. Different kinds of guys, but they've got an excess of it at quarterback. You got to find ways to get him on the field. The way that I envision that is if you're playing, let's say, a team like Texas A&M in Week 4. That's a tough defense to go against. And if you've scored in the 21 to 24-point range going into the fourth quarter, that's wonderful. You don't need to touch anything. You're doing what is probably going to be good enough to put you in position to compete to win the game. But if things bog down a little bit, and especially if you get in the second half of those kinds of games, I mean, all of a sudden being able to toss Malik Hornsby out there, I mean, he's not started the game. Maybe he hasn't seen a snap yet. But the ability to have full packages in your offensive weaponry and the confidence to be able to put the guy out there because he has repped those specific pages of your playbook over and over again, and that team believes in him, which I think they absolutely do, that's how I utilize him. I wouldn't sit around and wait for someone to get hurt or, wait for us to need a change up here on 3rd and 3. We want a more lightning bolt threat at quarterback. I'd be ready to put him in. I'd be having him as a layer in every one of my offensive game plans.
Josh, what's your opinion of Sam Pittman as a head coach? We probably didn't get to see a full display last year in a COVID year for his real first year as a head coach in this league. Where do you have Sam Pittman on your chart kind of as an SEC West head coach?
I'm really glad I was wrong about him. I mean, to be brutally honest with you, did not think it out the way I should have. When Arkansas hired him, it did not jump off the page to me. It did not wow me. But what I really undersold, and I mean critically undersold, was the importance of culture in college football. It matters so much more. And when I say culture, I mean a culture fit. In college, the head coach and the community, it's like two puzzle pieces. And if they don't interlock, they'll never interlock. And we've seen that a time or 10 in college football. Well, Sam Pittman is a puzzle piece. Well, he is Arkansas. And so, of course, when they bring him back home, he fits Arkansas. Well, if you're talking to, let's say, a New York Jets fan or a Minnesota Vikings fan at the pro level, that doesn't make sense. Because in the pros, I mean, if you can coach in New York, you coach in Seattle, you coach in Las Vegas, it's just they're all NFL jobs. In college, Sam Pittman would be a complete, let's call him a hog out of water, if I put him at the University of Oregon or the University of Southern California. But at Arkansas, it fits perfect. And so all of a sudden what you have is you've got that willing to go over the cliff type mentality in a locker room, and that is assumed to be present everywhere in every locker room, and it's not. It never is. And when you get it, it's very special. And when you get it, you want to make sure you preserve it, because that's what everyone else in the sport is looking for. Unless you get Nick Saban to walk in, who just transcends it all, you're looking for the culture fit. Down at Auburn right now, it is oil and water, because they are having trouble with that whole culture fit aspect of Brian Harsin and the Auburn Tigers. Well, at Arkansas, they're not having those discussions. And so then the question becomes, okay, how good can they be? I think if they put forth one more year of above expectation level performance, it really starts to gain traction and gain the attention of a lot of players that otherwise Arkansas would not have been on the radar for. Because if you can ever get Pittman in your living room, or if you can ever get kids on campus for an official visit, they'll recruit fine. Because that guy, I mean, he is like a bug zapper, and I'm like a mosquito. You can't look away from that guy. You want to gravitate towards him. You just got to give kids enough reason to believe in spending their college career at Arkansas. And I think this year they'll take another step closer to being in that conversation.
And to your point, this program at Arkansas had become known as soft under Chad Morris, and he rebuilt a culture of toughness and physicality last year. Beyond that and the win-loss total, what's the next step? What's the thing you want to see out of Sam Pittman's program as a whole this year to say that trend's in the right direction, that boat's headed on the right course?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think what I'll look for is I'll look at them offensively through their first couple of weeks. Let's say the first 4 weeks of the season. So you've got a couple of big games against the Texas schools in there. And then if you were to just freeze me in a cryogenic chamber and then thaw me out in mid-November, I want to look at the offensive evolution, and I want to see incremental improvement that has happened week over week. Because even if you're losing some games, you can be improving as a team. And so if I have seen, whether it be KJ Jefferson or Malik or, any other facet of this program, if you can see week over week development that is not directly correlated with just whether they won or lost games, if you can see a locker room and an entire organization that has adopted the mentality of that whole, next man up, next week up, chop wood, a lot of the tired cliches that actually work in life, if you can see a program that is reflecting that, it'll be obvious in November. No matter what the record is, it'll be obvious. If that's happening, then again, independent of what the record says, Sam Pittman's your guy, you're on the right track, and it's that compounding effect. That's the way it happens sometimes. If you're not a Tier 1 program in college football, you got to swing at the tree a long time, and you never know which one swing really did it. But all of a sudden, you have that little hockey stick compound effect where the line doesn't look like it's going up very fast, and then it just swings up all of a sudden in year 3 or year 4. And that's when you look back at year 2 and you say, boy, it didn't seem like we were about to explode, but we were laying the groundwork even then.
Josh Pate, 24/7 Sports with us here on the Morning Rush. Josh, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you brought up Chad Morris. Really the only thing I took issue with there is I heard you say there's no path to compete within the shark-infested waters of the SEC when Chad Morris was at Arkansas. And we saw Sam Pittman do that in year number 1. So what would you say is the biggest differences between the former head coach and Chad Morris and now Sam Pittman, who we've seen already have SEC success at Arkansas?
Well, so when I said that, I was talking from the perspective of an agent, because that's what a lot of agents are saying right now. It's why Napier is staying put for the time being at UL Lafayette. And what they're telling their clients is they're telling them, look at Chad Morris, because a lot of these guys want to hop at the first Power 5 job that's thrown their way, and they're telling their clients, use Chad Morris as a cautionary tale. He went to Arkansas, and he couldn't measure up to the expectation level there, and I didn't think he ever had a shot at measuring up to the expectation level, which I have no problem being lofty at Arkansas. And so they're telling their clients, look at that and look at where he is now, and then ask yourself, you know you're going to get offers every year. Does it really make sense? Does the risk-reward pro-con, does it really measure out? And their answer is no, stay put. So that's what they're telling their clients. Now, as for Chad Morris and the difference between him and Sam Pittman, I think part of it goes back to the whole culture fit. And what we were talking about is, what does it feel like when they walk in the door? I never got the feeling with Chad Morris walking in the door up there as I have with Sam Pittman. Nothing against him personally, certainly nothing against him personally, just never got that feeling. And there's a lot of intangible to that. In my world, we want a number for everything. In my world, we want to quantify everything. Well, the problem with that is a guy like Sam Pittman walks in a room, you can't quantify him because you can't quantify intangibles. That's the whole nature of an intangible. And I don't know whatever the it factor is. I just know I can't quantify it, and I know he has it above and beyond recent hires they've made there, and it's something I want to buy into.
He is Josh Pate. He covers college football at 24/7 Sports. He's also got a great college football podcast, The Late Kick, that you can watch on Sundays and Thursdays at 7 o'clock here in Arkansas. Josh, we really appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. 10 days till Razorback football. We got college football this weekend, and I know you're juiced up for it.
Absolutely ready for it. Happy to come on anytime. I appreciate it, guys.
Good stuff from Josh. Again, you can follow him on Twitter.
You know, the start of the season is just around the corner, and if you're into sports betting, Bet Online is where you should go to win some money today. Whether it's live bets during games or future bets on who you think will win the championship, Bet Online has all the latest odds, news, and information for all your online sports betting needs. Visit the website today or use your mobile device to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So before the next big game or before the season starts, head on over to Bet Online and start playing today. That's Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts.